Hardly has Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem on what we call Palm Sunday, when he is found in the temple and a dramatic scene ensues. In Matthew chapter 21 it's described as follows: "Then Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who were selling and buying." And a few verses later he quotes from the scriptures, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." There's something which does shock people about that incident, and it may be to do with the apparent violence in the actions of Jesus, that people find that hard to associate with some of their assumptions about Jesus, his character and how he behaves and so forth. What is undoubtedly the case is that Jesus was outraged by what he saw. And I don't think it was just the trading which was going on in itself, but the fact that that trading was exploitative of people. A bit later on in the passage we learn that there were money changers there and people selling doves. The temple tax, which had to be paid when you came to visit the temple, had to be paid in a particular currency. And so you had to change your everyday currency into that temple currency. And surprise, surprise, the people who did that for you didn't give you the best rate of exchange. And in a similar sort of way, you had to make your offering with an unblemished dove, for example. And who could provide you with one that was suitably unblemished? Well, of course, the people who were trading there and who were getting a backhander and so on and so forth, almost certainly. So actually what's going on here is an exploitation. Is an exploitation not least of the poor, of the ordinary people, of those who were coming to offer their devotions and their offerings at the temple. And right at that moment, they were being exploited. So perhaps it's justice, actually, which is driving Jesus. Justice rather than anger. Justice on behalf of those who are marginalised and exploited by others. Father Abu Ramoun writes about this story from his experience as a Palestinian Christian. He's a priest in Bethlehem. And he wonders also whether there might be something here which is about people's over-familiarity with the things of God, with the temple. They just carried on life. They kind of had lost the sense of awe and specialness of that place, the holiness of the place. They had become insensitive to the sense of God's presence there. And so just carried on in this way. They had lost that sense of the holy, of the other, as it were. And of course, we can do that too. What about me? Particularly those of us who spend quite a lot of time around church things and Christian things. Can we become deadened, insensitized to the importance of these matters? Begin to regard it as everyday, as ordinary, and we lose that sense of the specialness, of the holiness, of the wonder, of the majesty of God. So perhaps this incident is recalling us to a new following of Jesus in ways which are ways of mercy rather than of sacrifice, in ways of humility, walking with humility, seeking justice. And how might I express that? How might I embody that in who I am, in the way I behave, in my community, with my family and my friends, in my society, indeed within the global society? How might that be put into practice, this sense of the presence of God, this sense of that which God requires of us by way of mercy and justice and humility? Perhaps it's to be seen in things like making sure that the COVID vaccines are spread across the whole world, that the poor have access to them as well as the rich. Maybe it's in relation to climate change and the awareness that affects the poorest much more than the rich, those whose lands are no longer fertile and so forth, including some of our brothers and sisters in places like Tanzania. These are the things perhaps which we should be moved to consider as we encounter this passage, to remember what God requires and to act justly out of a sense of God's justice. Here's part of a poem by Father Richard Nesbitt. What is the lesson of this whipped-up commotion? What lies behind the chaos and raw emotion? Holy ground reduced to so very much less, a place of welcome, of prayer profaned. Leaders in faith blinded by lust for profit gained. Yes, all of this, but so much more. Jesus the Lamb, like the birds and beasts, comes to the altar, destined to die, but at his death a new temple will rise, no longer of stone, but of flesh and bone. His body will become the new sacrifice.